Julia, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is my great pleasure to have you here. Finally, someone that knows more than me on credit cards. I mean, that's not hard to do since I know nothing about the points world. And my wife said not to mention her 500 times because I seem to do it on almost every podcast. But she has become quite the wizard, as we were just kind of talking beforehand. But before I get carried away, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell everybody what you do and why you're here.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm the host of the GeoBreeze Travel podcast. I'm most active on Instagram at GeoBreeze Travel, and I teach people how to turn their expenses into points and miles and how to turn those points and miles into free travel, almost free, for next to no cost. Whether you're a budget traveler or you're more of a luxurious traveler, we teach you how to make the most of your points.
Well, that's greatly needed. For me, especially, I don't understand it that well. I'm slowly getting it more and more. My wife just tells me what to do with which credit card we're using to maximize those points. But the business that I'm in, the card business, is a world that it's predominantly cash heavy. Everyone wants to be cash, 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 cash. One, for avoiding whatever taxes they're trying to magically hide from, and then a bunch of other things. And now that I've been going to shows more and I use a credit card. I just have it linked to my PayPal, Venmo. And yeah, sometimes I have to take the fee and whatnot. But it's really, it's like non-existent when you think of all the, the benefits you get from using the credit card, instead of just always using cash, cash, cash. To me, and we'll get into it, but I try to keep preaching to people now, especially that, I just went to California basically for free for a card show from buying points and, buying inventory, that I'm making money off the inventory, but I'm also being able to pay for these trips to go buy more inventory. And yeah, I'm going to push this as hard as I can into my community because I think that they need to use it as much as some of these guys travel. I'm talking about people travel 5-6 times a month to shows from all over the place. And they're just loading up expenses. And I know they're paying those on a credit card, but I think they usually keep their inventory and whatnot kind of off the books, let's just say, air quotes. So if you could give like a beginner's lowdown on how to get started, I guess is the best way I'd like to approach this, because I don't know really anything other than, I have a credit card and that means I get to charge it and hopefully I pay it off before the interest rate hits. Right?
Well, it sounds like a lot of your audience is probably already past the beginner point where a lot of the times beginners will be like, how can I meet the minimum spend on a credit card? Because a lot of the ways that they're structured is that you get a large sign-up bonus for getting any of these high reward cards, almost any of them, where maybe if you spend $3,000 or $4,000 in the first $3,000 in the first 3 months of having the card, you can get 50,000 points, 60,000 points, and that's usually enough to get you round trip to Europe from the US or like a one-way business class flight to Europe. So to meet that minimum spend, that's where a lot of people actually struggle, where they're like, I don't have $3,000 of expenses coming up in the next 3 months, so I don't think this game is for me. But it sounds like that's not even a problem that your audience would have if they're buying a lot of inventory. Another question that we get a lot from beginners is, how does this impact my credit score? Because people are always afraid that if they're opening or closing down different accounts, their credit score's just shot. They're never going to be able to buy a house or anything like that. But we can talk about this a little bit more. But as you get into the game of credit cards and points and miles, my credit generally hovers around the 800 mark. And most people will see that their credit score will increase as long as they follow a couple of rules. One of those rules is you have to pay off your bill in full every month. I think that's something that a lot of people don't really think about with credit cards. But for those of us who are more financially educated and have had exposure to a lot of those more personal finance blogs that tell you, hey, you have to pay off your credit card bill in full. As long as you do that, you'll earn points over and over again without having to pay interest or come across any of those bad repercussions that people with bad credit card habits we'll often run into.
10 years ago me is who you're talking to right now.
Really?
I had I guess it's a little older now, but like 15, 20 years ago me, especially in my 20s, I mean, I was horrible with credit cards. I was horrible with finances. And there's no way in a million years I would have ever thought a credit card at one point to a lot of people, especially when you're young, unless you have somebody that's kind of been coaching you a little bit, or you got like somebody that goes, hey, be really careful, have $100 limit, start there, and pay that off, and, work your way up to having a $5,000, $10,000 limit. I would greatly spend beyond my means. And a lot of people in my business are still in that mentally childish, not calling them childs, or children, but a lot of them think like, okay, I'm just going to charge my credit card. I'm going to run this $10,000 boom tab up, and then I'm just going to pay the minimum, and then I'll eventually pay it off. Eventually, we all know what that turns into. But thankfully, I've I guess learned from my mistakes. 1, 2. Once again, I have an outstanding wife that kind of has a good business mind, especially in the sense like, your credit card, yes, great. It might even have 0% interest on attached to that credit card. Like a lot of new credit cards, it's 0.0 whatever for the APR. But pay it off like you're going to have to pay it off at every time the bill is due, and that's been a great way to kind of keep me, not to go off on a credit rant, but keep me in like a good box, a safe box, instead of just being like, it's free money, I'll eventually pay it off. And then you look, some people I'm sure look back a year and they go, man, I'm paying $700 a month just in this APR, not $700 a month, but you know what I mean? They're paying all this money in extras. So that is a great opening tip for people, I guess spend within your means, following that rule of, hey, if you are going to get this credit card, you do need to pay it off within the monthly time frame. What would be what would be number 2?
So number 2 is spend money that you don't have just to earn more points, because as people start earning points and they're like, oh, this is awesome, I can get free hotel rooms, I can get free flights, then people start to get into, oh, that's like a $500 coat that I don't need. But if I buy it, I get 500 more points, so I should just like buy more things to get more points. That is a slippery slope and deep trap that people fall into. So obviously try to earn more than 1 point per dollar whenever you're spending on stuff to earn points, but don't buy things that you don't need just to earn more points, especially as you're thinking about getting your next card where you're like, okay, I need to meet a $3,000 minimum spend in order to get the sign-up bonus. And then you want to plan how to do that before you even open the card, because you don't want to get to that 2-month mark and be like, oh, I've only spent $2,000 out of the $3,000 required, and this is where most of the points are going to come from. So let's buy $1,000 of stuff I don't need from Amazon.
$1,000 purse, yeah.
Yeah. So that's another trap that people fall into. And especially, like you mentioned, if people can't pay off their credit card bill in full every month, that is how they can offer such nice rewards, because people are always like, is this a trap? Like, this seems too good to be true. How can they offer you a free first class flight if like it's all for free? The banks are kind of banking on you to not be able to pay off your credit card bill.
100%.
The interest charges on these credit cards, the high rewards ones, are some of the highest interest charges on the market, because they're banking on people to not be able to pay it off. But as long as you do pay off your credit card bill in full every month, then you never have to pay interest. And then you basically get all of those for free. We can talk about annual fees in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, then you don't have to pay the interest charges, which is kind of how they expect the economics to work for these credit cards.
How have they not gotten come crashing down on this? I mean, I know I guess they think, if 1 million people open up these credit cards, they're probably thinking 50% at least are going to start dipping into that interest rate, money. And they're going to be like, yeah, well, I mean, sure, these 50% are winning us over here. They're beating the house, but this other 50% is, 3xing whatever they're doing. So who really cares about these people? I guess they'd really have a problem if 100% of people were just perfect and just crushing, opening and closing cards all the time. And then I think maybe the government and everybody would be like, oh man, wait, what's everybody doing here?
So they have other ways of making money other than just the interest charges. So even from me, they do make money, and a lot of it is on the business to business side with the interchange charges. So whenever you swipe your credit card, the business that you paid with has to pay an extra fee. So even if I'm paying off my bills all the time on time, credit card companies will still make money because I bought stuff from restaurants or grocery stores, so they made it off the business side.
Yeah, and especially now with so many places going cashless, they must be loving that. They're probably like, sweet, no more cash. Everyone's got to use a credit card or Apple Pay or whatever they're doing, What would rule number 3 be? Is there a third rule?
Those are the 2 main rules for most people is pay off everything in full every month. Like even before you get your first high rewards credit card, make sure that you already have the sign-up bonus amount sitting in your checking account ready to go to pay off your bill. Don't be like, I'll figure out how to come up with $3,000. Just have the $3,000 ready to go so you don't have to worry about that on top of figuring out all of the credit card games. So that's just rule number 1. Rule number 2, don't buy things that you don't really need. And then from there, there's lots of different ways to play the game. We have more than 120 episodes on the GeoBreeze Travel podcast. We feature a different person every week about how they play the game and the different strategies that they do, because there's different strategies for, are you a teacher? Do you have a large family? Are you a solo traveler? Are you a digital nomad? Are you a business owner? We can talk about how the secret to earning a lot of points is doing exactly what your audience does, where they're kind of doing a buy and sell type of thing. They have inventory going through, and the business credit cards have some of the highest sign-up bonuses and a lot more opportunities to earn more points with each dollar spent.
Yeah, we've reaped some great benefits from them, and it's always wild to me when I'm at a show and I go, hey, do you take PayPal? No, just cash. And I kind of go, what? Like, where are we living? Like, just why not? And then I have to go through my credit card spiel. I go, I didn't pay for this trip. Like, the only thing and they a light bulb kind of starts to go. I can see everything starting to fire off in their brain going, man, I've been doing this for like 30 years and why do I keep just taking cash? I could have been just buying all this stuff. Some people have millions of dollars worth of inventory, sitting in these cases, and I'm like, man, you could have really, done some damage, even just from the small amount that, we've done. I think everybody, as long as they, one, follow your 2 rules, and 2, that I think the plan is, everyone should go listen to your, you said like over 150 episodes on GeoBreeze 120, on GeoBreeze Travel, to get other ideas. I'm gonna ask you for some right now on how people can kind of a Cliff Notes version of how they could get, because it's a lot. Like my brain, I would have to write every single card down and be constantly like having an Excel spreadsheet. And some people can just, oh, it's in my head, and it's like, wow, that must be so efficient. I mean, if you have that kind of analytical mind. What are some of the better kind of things you could do for kind of the beginner
to stay organized? Because
especially with once you get 1 and you're like, okay, I did pretty good with that 1, I'm going to get 2 now, and then you're trying to make sure you have the card that you're getting 2 points at dinner, and then the one that's 2 points for gas. All those kind of things. I'm sure plenty of people have their little tips and tricks.
So for figuring out what's the best card to use, there's a free app. It's called Card Pointers. And you don't even need to give it any of your information or anything. You just manually type in, here are the cards I have. And then it'll have categories for you to say, what are you trying to buy? Are you trying to buy groceries? Are you trying to buy dinner? Are you trying to go shopping? What are you trying to do? And it'll automatically calculate which of the cards that you have you should use in order to get the most points per dollar. So you don't even have to allocate brain space to that. There's just a free app to do that for you. It's called Card Pointers.
Card Pointers. All right, everybody, download Card Pointers, all 5 of you that listen to me. But that's crazy. I didn't know about that. I need that because my brain can't do it. I get yelled at all the time. Like, why'd you use this card there? It's not, you're getting just 1 point. And I'm like, all right, sorry.
Some people do put like masking tape on their different cards where they're like, honey, this one is the one to use for gas, and this is the one to use for food. So some people, if they're like, oh, he's not going to remember the app, they just write on there with masking tape on which card to use for what.
I like it that you said honey, because you know it's the husbands that aren't the ones that are remembering, because we're stupid.
It's
Okay.
always player two. So we have what's called two-player mode, where like you've roped your spouse or your significant other into this.
Okay.
And all the player ones know where, I guess if it was the guy, I'd be like, babe, you know that this is the gas card. And she'll be like, I don't know that. So it's whoever is the player one, they always know that we have systems in place for player two.
How long when did you first start doing this?
So I got into the credit card game about 5 years ago, and I've been doing GeoBreeze travel for like 3 years.
Okay. And maybe this is too personal, but on average, how many cards are you kind of cycling through on a given year, I guess seems like a time frame?
So over all of the years between me and my husband, over 5 years, we've got about 20 cards. We don't use all of them. And actually, I try to tell people all the time, you don't need 20 cards because most of my peers in like the Instagram influencer space or the blog space or anything, we make most of our money by selling cards. So if we can tell everybody, oh, you need these 20 cards, that's how we make a lot of commissions. I personally don't love that the industry just pushes cards all the time because there's so many other strategies for how to earn points and miles. You would do so much better just opening a successful buy and sell business for the card, like the sports cards that you guys do. Or I know a guy who was turning through $3 million worth of shoes on Amazon. He would just like go through Nike.com or Adidas.com and find all the shoes that were on sale, and then they'd be sold out. So he'd be like limited edition on Amazon, and
Wow.
he's just earning millions of points that way. So if somebody can set up a successful business, or one at least that you're at least breaking even with inventory and putting all the inventory on your card, that's going to do a lot better than trying to juggle 20 different cards. I know I'm probably not supposed to say that, and my industry hates me that I keep bringing this up, because they're like, you're messing with our revenue and our sales. We make money by like selling cards to everybody.
So when you say selling cards, you're like, hey, this American Express Platinum card, use my link below, bam, once they click it, it's like an affiliate link, and that's what you mean by selling cards? Gotcha. I was like, are you selling credit cards? How do you do that? I want to learn how to do that.
It's all affiliate links. So every month you'll see tons of people who are like, here are the 20 best credit cards. And so if they can just push that to a lot of people, and a lot of people are applying for their links, whether or not they actually need the card or the card is a good fit, that is how a lot of us make our money. I don't like to publish my links. I just tell people like I do free credit card consults. If somebody is in the market for a card, I will give them a personalized recommendation. But I personally don't like to just blast my links out there, because then I just feel bad if somebody is like not following rule number one. Because sometimes I try to vet people. I'm like, but do you pay off their bills in full? I just don't want to profit from somebody using my links if they're not even going to follow the first two rules we talked about.
Sure. And I could see, I could see one where it gets addicting for people, because especially if they're financially stable, they're able to pay off their cards, just like, following the rules and all that. But I could see where it's like, okay, let's get another one. Oh, let's get another one. Oh, let's get another one. And then you have I'm sure there's some people that kind of get overwhelmed at one point. They're like, oh, damn, I got way too many open. That could hurt your credit score though, right? If you just have a bunch of open ones that you're not using, or not at all? There are certain
ways that you could hurt your credit score. So if you break rule number one and then you're not paying your bills on time, your credit score is going down. So rule number one is very important. Usually when you're opening more and more of these credit lines, it actually helps your credit score because of credit utilization, which is the amount of credit that you've used divided by the total amount you have. So if you've opened a whole bunch of cards and you have like $1 million in credit available to you, and you're only spending a small amount each month, your utilization percentage is really low. That's going to make your credit score look really good. So it's actually good that way. But then when people start freaking out about the annual fees, because they're like, oh, I opened 20 cards, I'm paying thousands of dollars in fees for cards I never even use, and you start closing them down, then your total credit available will start shrinking. And then you'll be like, oh my God, they got really mad. My credit score is going down so fast. It's because your utilization percentage goes up really fast if you just start closing down credit line after credit line.
Wow. And those fees, not all cards have fees, but are the best ones with fees most of the time? Is that kind of how they get you, or it just depends?
Not necessarily. So when it comes to a card with annual fees, it's important to be able to justify the annual fee. So, for example, a lot of the hotel cards are going to be like $95 a year, and most of them are going to come with one free hotel night, like let's say the Marriott one. If you're going to stay at a Marriott anyway, like you're going to stay at one Marriott in the next year, and the Marriott you want to stay at costs at least $100, then you should just keep the card. Pay the $95, get your free night. Card pays for itself that way. Plus, you can
Yep.
take advantage of some other benefits. But there are other cards, like sometimes the airline cards, they'll be like, oh, you get like some free check bags, you get priority boarding, and then it's $100 a year. If you don't really value those things, if you're always team carry on anyway, and you're like, I don't really need
Team
to be
carry on.
team carry on where you don't have a check bag. So if you're not able to use the benefits that come with the card, then it's not worth the annual fee. And whether it's worth it or not is just going to be very different to each person. I know some people who travel with 3 check bags and they're like, oh my God, this saved me $2,000 a year because I'm checking bags every single
Right.
time. And I'm like, okay, you do you. Yeah, that $95 fee was definitely worth it for you.
How
But
many
some people-
shoes are you bringing?
I think it's like gifts, like for
Yeah.
people who they're visiting, and then they bring a whole bunch of souvenirs back, and they're basically just a courier of gifts.
A gift mule. Do you do?
So anytime we go back to the Philippines, like we're bringing suitcases of like gifts for everybody there, and then they're sending gifts for everybody back. So, if anybody here is Filipino who knows what a balikbayan box is in your suitcase, yeah, those check bag fees that are waived, we save a lot of money that way.
I'm thinking what one of those are because I've spent quite a good amount of time when I was in the Navy in the Philippines, and never been to Manila. But yeah, great. I had some good times there. I could totally see though being if you're coming from the States and going there too, like bringing if your family's there and there's only stuff in the States that you can get and you got to bring it. Here, look at all this stuff I got. Or if you got family
or the other
that
way around,
now
if you're like,
that's what I'm saying. Like if you flip it.
Yeah.
Do you deal with any? I guess I have a lot of questions now because my brain's starting to really go. First, since I brought up the military, do you deal with a lot of military people?
I personally don't, but
Okay.
they have a lot of benefits for active duty military or even veterans sometimes. So if you're active duty military, you don't have to pay annual fees on the personal credit card. So get yourself an Amex Platinum. You don't have to pay that $695. Get yourself a Chase Sapphire Reserve. You don't have to pay that $550. Get yourself a Capital One Venture X. Just get the most expensive personal card with every brand because active duty military doesn't have to pay it. And you get all of those perks with the Amex Platinum. You get $200 at fine hotels and resorts, $200 off of airline incidental credits. You get some Uber credits every month. You get $100 off at Saks Fifth Avenue every year. You get
How much?
$100 at Saks Fifth Avenue.
That's crazy.
They have tons of benefits. If you live near an Equinox, they give you $300 off your Equinox membership each year. So all of these are supposed to be how they justify the $695 annual fee. You get into airport lounges for free with the Amex Platinum. So yeah, it's a very expensive
military
annual fee.
needs to get on it. If you're not on it and you're in the military, I wasn't on it, mostly because I was too scared to push the issue, and because of my past credit history, and it was before my wife got hyper into how she's into it now. But man, I mean, a lot of my friends have Amex Platinums, but all those other ones, I think maybe they might have some fear of, if I open these credit cards, it's like, well, if you're not, you could spread out your spending across the cards. You don't need to put everything on the Amex. You can just on the Chase Sapphire, or what's it called, Reserve, and all the other ones. So all my military friends that will eventually listen to this, you need to get on it, and then teach your wives. Tell your wives, or because you guys are too dumb too to follow this kind of stuff. So go to GeoBreeze Travel, listen to the podcast, especially. I'm not ending this right now, but you guys listening need to go listen, because all the traveling that they do, I could only imagine what they could kind of be manipulating, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, two things. So spouses of military, active duty military also get their annual fees waived. So
Oh,
you could get
wow.
all of those fees waived, plus your spouse could get all of them waived as well through the Military Lending Act. And a funny story from there's this guy, Richard Kerr, who used to be in the Navy. He's now like a senior director at Built, where we can talk about that credit card in a little bit. But when he was active duty in Japan, obviously all of your annual compensation is public record of how much you're paid, but his Facebook
Right.
had all of these first class flights and everything. And he got audited so many times because people were like, hey man, are you doing something off the books? Like, we know how much we pay you, and we know how much these flights cost, and the math is not mathing. And he's like, no, like, see, points and miles.
Wow.
So be
That's
prepared for
crazy.
audits. But yeah, they'll start being like, how are you affording any of these things?
Oh my God, I could only imagine. I mean, there was a couple. It's funny because there was a couple times when we were in Thailand, and the guys were like, "Oh, I'm just use my Marriott card. Just you guys Venmo me. I'm going to use my Marriott card." And they were, a couple of them were smart enough to be. They were doing the point game, a tiny bit, a little sliver of it. What's a good beginner card? Like if you're just starting, I guess it all kind of also depends on your spending habits and whatnot. But I'm sure there's kind of a few that you have in your back pocket.
Yeah, the most popular beginner card is the Chase Sapphire Preferred. We call it like the gateway card because Chase transfers to so many different partners. So one of my favorites is Hyatt Hotels, but you can also transfer it to United or Southwest or JetBlue or Air Canada or a lot of other international carriers as well. So a lot of people like to start with the Chase Sapphire Preferred. If you're military, you should just go for the Chase Sapphire Reserve because you don't have to pay the annual fees on it anyway. And then you get a $300 travel credit each year, and then you get access to priority pass lounges. So you don't have to pay for food or drinks at the airport. It's just unlimited buffet or alcohol
Amazing.
buffet. So you could do that. That's a very popular one. For families, it's really popular to get the Capital One Venture X these days because it's similar to the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and it's a slightly lower annual fee, but you get lounge access and top tier status with Hertz. So you can basically just walk onto the rental car lot if you guys rent cars and pick any car that you want off of the lot. So those are a couple really popular ones these days.
That's amazing. I'm loving all of this information because I know nothing about it. Does the Chase Sapphire Preferred get you into the lounges? No, huh? You need that reserve status. Uh-oh. You froze. She froze for a second. Maybe her internet didn't like me anymore. There she goes. She's back. I
You'll
lost you
need
for
the
a
Chase
second.
Sapphire Reserve in order to
Okay.
get into the lounges.
Okay. So after they break through and get their first one under their, a person gets their first one under their belt, should they already have the next one in mind, and they keep that other one going, or what's the
So
next level?
So once you get your card, make sure you set your bill to be auto paid in full. Make sure you meet the minimum spend because you don't want to open multiple cards and then miss a minimum spend because that's where most of your points are going to come from, especially as a beginner, is right at the beginning in that first 3 months, just meeting that $3,000. So make a plan for how you're going to meet that first $3,000 or whatever it needs to be. And they're not all that high. Like the Chase Freedom Flex, the minimum spend's $500, and then you earn a smaller amount of sign-up points. So if you're listening to this being like, I don't have any $3,000 expenses, you can start
Sure.
with a smaller card. Yeah.
And especially and these are most of these, I guess all of these are the business cards are really the ones that you get the most juice for your squeeze, right?
Oh yeah. So let's talk about business credit cards.
Yeah.
So after a while, once you've like delved with the personal cards, people are like, okay, but like, how are you, Julia, earning this many points per year? Like, this is insane. And
Can you say how many you earn a year?
I like to keep
Do
my
you
balance.
want to?
I don't know actually how many I earn per year, but I keep my balance at like 1 to 2 million, and then we're spending like 1 million points at least between me and my husband for our. It's
One
probably
to
way
two
more.
million points?
Yeah, at least.
That's insane. That's I'm guessing there's people even higher than you that keep, some insane. I'm not talking like Puff Daddy and stuff who has, probably spends $1 million on a credit card every month. But like
anyone
normal people like us.
Yeah, anyone with a business where there's a lot of buy and sell going on. So I was talking to somebody where they flip houses and they said they were spending tons of money on Home Depot because they just needed materials for fixing up the houses. Or there was another couple I know who rent out like Airbnbs, like they'll flip houses and turn them into Airbnbs. And just the cost of supplies was so high, and they make it back from the revenue side. But they were
Sure.
like, we have millions of points. Like they're earning points faster than they know what to do with them, because they're like, well, we have to like not be on vacation all the time because we have to work and like flip the houses sometimes. But we're spending so much money at Home Depot and like with contractors who happen to take credit cards and other things, that they do just earn millions and millions of points. So
Wow.
anyone who's like a restaurant owner, if you can buy your supplies on credit cards,
Credit.
you're going to earn a ton of points that way. Anything where you're like turning through stuff, sports cards are really like a prime example. I know people who just get into buying and selling, not even for the profit, but just for the credit card points. People will like flip tickets on StubHub, anything
I
that you
bet.
want to flip. People will go to thrift stores and like buy out a whole bunch of stuff and then resell it on Poshmark, because all the stuff they spent at the thrift store goes onto a credit card. And so they get a lot of points that way too. And then they
That's
qualify for
genius.
business cards. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, back to the business cards before I got sidetracked on that astronomical amount of points that you have. But that's really the true level up, huh? Is the business move. So yeah, go into that amazingness.
So I would start with the first two business credit cards I would start with would be the Chase Ink Business Cash and Chase Ink Business Unlimited. There is no annual fee on them. Right now, there is an increased sign-up bonus. I don't know when this is going to air, so it might go back down eventually, but there's no sign-up fee. And usually those two cards would be cash back only. But if you get the Chase Sapphire Preferred or Chase Sapphire Reserve, your gateway card, you can call Chase and be like, hey, I just want one login. Can you like consolidate my personal and business logins? And then you can transfer your points from your Ink account to your Sapphire account, use all the combined points for travel, which is going to get you way more value out of each point rather than just cashing it out.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's what I have. I have those three, and it is bomb. But remember, I'm going to keep repeating, follow Julia's first and second rule, but especially that first rule. If you got the credit card and you charge it up and you buy $5,000 inventory at the card show, you got to pay it off at the end of the month. You can't just be like la-di-da and then you don't get the points, really, right? That's how you won't get the points, correct? Is that how it works?
You will still get the points, but your interest that you have to pay is going to be so high that it negates whatever value you're going to get out of those points. So then you just did a whole bunch of work to net back to zero, basically.
Makes sense. And you were going to say before I interrupted you before too, once you do have those business cards, those don't hit your credit score the same, correct? So you can, as long as you're responsible, you can kind of keep opening. And I know it's always kind of an explanation with the bank or the creditor. You know, they're like, so what do you need another card for? Especially with someone like me, they keep me on like a really tight leash still, even though my credit score is at, I think my wife said it's like 800 now or 780 or something like that. The FYI, it used to be like in the 400s. Okay, so yeah, I'm telling you, I was bad news a long time ago. I'm probably still bad news now, but much more level-headed. And being that my credit score it is where it is now, it's kind of annoying that when I do try to open a new card, because I do exactly that, and it's what I try to keep coaching other people in my business to do is. Yes, they only give me a $5,000 limit or a $3,000. Most of them, I think, they're $3,000 limit. And you know, it's literally charge it, pay it off, charge it, pay it off. You know, and they can see that in my history. It's just kind of like a machine, constantly buying and paying it off. That's also from my smart wife, and like, yep, we're gonna pay it off, bam, bam, bam. You know, just and there's 0% interest cards still. I think for the first year there's 0% APR, or for the first 2 years or something like that. But it's such a way to like level up the point game. Is there a limit to how many business cards you can open in a year or in a period?
Not really, but there is a rule called the 5/24 rule, which is a Chase specific thing that says if you've opened more than 5 cards in the last 24 months, Chase is just going to reject your application. And that's not just with Chase cards. That can be, did you open an Amex card, a Capital One card, a Citi card, a Bank of America card, and a TJ Maxx card in the past 5 years or in the past 2 years, then Chase is going to reject your application.
Oh, wow.
But business credit cards don't count towards 5 over 24. So if you've just opened 10 business cards in the last 2 years, Chase doesn't even really know about those.
Wow.
There's a couple of exceptions, like Capital One, Discover, and TD America business cards, for whatever reason, do get reported to your personal report. So Chase will know about those. But otherwise, if you already opened a whole bunch of cards and you're like, oh, I want to get back into Chase's good graces, but I want to keep opening more cards, what do I do? Business cards would be the answer to that, like non-Chase business cards. So you could get a whole bunch of Amex business cards or something so that you're still getting more cards and opening more points, but your Chase 5 over 24 score is slowly getting back down.
Wow. That's so nuts. I keep trying to think to myself how bad I would have been at this a long time ago without. I mean, I never knew this wasn't even a thing, really. I mean, you always see the points, and I always thought it was like bullshit, basically. I'm like, yeah, this is just them trying to get people to get more cards and stuff. And I was like one of these, more credit cards. Sorry if I say the card people that listen, they're going to be like, more cards? Yes, let's buy more cards. And now that I think about it, all the benefits that get tied into having these credit cards, are there other... I'm guessing that, do you have like an Instagram group that people can, or a Facebook group, I guess there's not groups in Instagram, that they can kind of deep dive as well, that you want to plug?
Yeah, so it depends what people are into. If you're more into short form stuff, I have a lot of Instagram content. Most of the Instagram content these days are saying, go to the YouTube, which has deeper content, where on Instagram, it'll be mostly like, did you know you could do these? And if people are like, how do I do those? Then we have full walkthroughs on YouTube. It's totally free. I have the tutorials there. And then those are more like, hey, for like general, everybody, here's how you do like American Airlines, different tricks. If you want something specific to yourself where you're like, I'm trying to get from Houston to Korea and I have these points, like, what do I do? We do have a Patreon, and I do custom tutorials for people. So everybody just sends me in their queries, and then I'll say like, okay, I'll take 15, like the first 15 requests or whatever, and then I'll make videos for those. So it's very specific to what somebody's doing, because sometimes people are like, okay, I saw your video on how to use United points, but I don't know how to apply that to my specific situation. So we have the Patreon there. But what everybody should do is download the free course, because if you're like, I'm so confused, I don't know where to start, what do? I do have a free course on Points and Miles 101 that just shows you how to go from 0 to your first redemption. It's at geobreezetravel.com/free course.
Okay, sweet. And I'll have that link in the description as well. Before we kind of end here, I want to hit on kind of your social media. It's something when people are really good with or have built their social media to turn it into kind of their career. When you first started 5 years ago, you said, correct?
I started in the points game 5 years ago, but I opened my Instagram about 3 years ago.
Okay, so you started in the points game 5 years ago and then started your Instagram 3 years ago. In that 3-year time, I mean, your first video, I'm guessing, must have been like, do you remember what your first video was?
I really fought the whole video thing for a long time, because I think Instagram just kind of wants to be TikTok and can't get their algorithm figured out. But yeah, it was, let's see. I went to my boss's wedding in Hawaii, and he was like, oh, like, show some photos and like, let's all post about the wedding so that it's fun. So I kind of just made it a vacation Instagram. Wow. And then at some point I was like, well, this was before I had a business. So I was like, well, if I have a business, I can get business credit cards where like the big points are. So I actually opened a travel agency right before the pandemic, and I hated it. I had a couple clients and I was like, I don't like doing this. So I used the pandemic as an excuse to close it down. Then GeoBreeze just kind of became a digital media thing where I'm like, oh yeah, I teach people how to do credit cards, sold a couple like cards through links. I'm like, yeah, it's like a real business. And then it's just kind of grown from there. Got podcast sponsors, private clients, the Patreon. I launched a course that did pretty well. So yeah, lots of different ways to make money on the internet, I guess. They're
100%. I'm obsessed with it, especially starting this podcast venture. And I've never was an Instagram guy. My business was always on Twitter. That was it. And I had to force myself to get an Instagram and put myself out there to try to grow this channel. And I'm always curious. Your tips on credit cards were amazing, and I think for beginners, they're going to find some great useful tips in there. And then obviously when they go to your page, I'm sure they're going to find an overabundance of information, probably slightly overwhelmed and slightly excited. Hopefully no one gets in credit card debt after listening to this. But the other side is it's not easy to grow your digital kind of landscape. It seems easy, like the way you kind of put it. It's like, start my Instagram, and then it just kind of blew up. Was there a moment where you kind of go, oh, damn, kind of hitting my stride here? These things I'm doing are working enough to where it's, leveling me up.
So in the beginning, it's really important to network with other people, because 3 years ago, there weren't really a lot of people on Points talking about Instagram. And now there are a gazillion of them. I feature most of them on my podcast. And in the beginning, the podcast started because I wasn't as good at Points like 3 years ago. I was like, oh, people have like so many secrets and I want to know the secrets. And I wanted to be like, hey, can we like jump on a Zoom call and like just hang out and you tell me your secrets? And of course, people were like, no, it's really weird.
My secret.
And I was like, what if I record our conversation and release it to thousands of people on the internet instead of just keeping your secret? And they were like, oh, like you're launching a podcast. I'm like, yeah, the podcast. It's coming.
That's what I was doing.
I'd love to be on your podcast. So then I'm like, okay, so I launched a podcast so people would like tell me their point secret. So I was learning that way. And then we were like promoting each other's channels where they were like, I was featured on this Points podcast. And that really helps with just collaborating with other people in the beginning. And then you have to make a lot of content. And then at some point you have like your 15 minutes of fame. So last summer, I don't know what was going on. So many people went like viral last summer. I went from 38,000 followers to 159,000 followers in a week.
What?
A couple of my videos just like hit the algorithm correctly, and then it went to 159. And since then, like since last summer to now, it's only grown like 5,000 or 6,000, 7,000. I'm at 166 right now. So it was like slowly growing, and then it shot up, and then it's like plateaued. So I don't like depending on the algorithm, but
sure,
I do feel really, really lucky on that 1 week where there were quite a few of us where we all just shot up, and now everybody's engagement has kind of plateaued off again as Instagram tries to figure out their algorithms. But I would say
that's amazing.
Thank you. I would say the thing that you can actually control is collaborating with other people, and also using Instagram or TikTok or whatever you can to get people to literally anything else. Most useful would be an email list. So a lot of things on Instagram, like free lead magnets, or like I try to get people to my YouTube, but mostly I try to get people onto the email list, because that doesn't just suddenly, poof, we changed the email algorithm. There's not like an email algorithm.
Right. Man, so do you know what video you did to make it or what spiked it?
There were 3 that happened all at the same time. So one was Kimpton hotels have a secret password where when you check in, if you say the secret password, you can get like free drinks or free like parking, breakfast, upgrade, something.
I did not know that.
That got like 1 million views. And then I had another one that was like, if you get bumped from your plane involuntarily, like here's exactly how much money the airline owes you. That probably got like 2 million views.
Whoa.
And because these were already like starting to go up, I did a giveaway where I was like, oh my God, we went from like 35 to 38 in a week. This is amazing. Like I'll just do a giveaway, share any of my reels, and then like I'll pick a giveaway winner. And so people just started sharing any of the reels, but mostly they shared like the 2 that were already doing well. And so the algorithm was like, oh, lots of people are sharing this, we should share it. So by just like adding gas to that fire, I think that's really what made it blow up. I tried a second giveaway at some point later. It didn't work nearly as well. So I haven't been able to recreate that, but it was a pretty good week.
Is that where, and is that, you said you are sponsored?
I do sponsored content. So I try not to do too many because nobody likes watching that much sponsored content on Instagram. It's more so on the podcast. But yeah, I've worked with lots of different sponsors in the past. The biggest one is probably Southwest Airlines, but I've worked with a lot of software that makes points and miles a little bit easier. My husband told me I can't partner with any more suitcase companies because we have too many bags. So I try to partner with people because they're always like, oh, we'll just like send you stuff. And
That's
we had
amazing.
a small New Jersey apartment. So he was like, we don't have room for any more stuff. So I'm like, well, what freebies can I accept? Apps. So
Nike, support Julia.
They're going to send me shoes. They're going to send me clothes. Like it's physical things. So I asked for a lot of like, oh, can I get access to your free premium tier of your software? Because if it's a software company, it also didn't cost them anything. They were like, yeah, here's like, it would have been like $50 for me to buy the premium tier of whatever they were selling. But because it's software, like the marginal cost is so low, they were just like, yeah, here it is.
Man, that is awesome. I love hearing about people that have been able to kind of grow their social media. It's a trick that I'm still trying to learn how to master. I've literally had an Instagram since January. Let that blow your mind. So I've been trying to navigate that landscape along with this whole podcasting journey.
It took 2 years to like get to the viral point. So if someone's like, well, how do I just like skip to the viral point? It would be very difficult to do that. So it does just kind of go like inching along for a while. And like, I was already at 38,000, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
But then it really shot up. And from there, I'm like, okay, well, like, how can I recreate that? It's been slow since then, but been able to grow out some other stuff too. Like podcast has been growing pretty gradually. Steady, gradually. And then email list and
your podcast is syndicated on all major platforms, Spotify, yes. Apple Podcast. And what's the name of that one really quick? GeoBreeze Travel Podcast?
GeoBreeze Travel Podcast, yes.
And your IG is at GeoBreeze Travel. And I want to thank you very much. Is there anything else that you got on the horizon that you want to plug or put out there? All the links will be in the descriptions. But is there anything else that I missed?
At some point we try to do points and miles meetups because that's where you can get like the deep hacks. Like there's certain things that due to compliance laws I'm not allowed to say on like any recorded media, but if you come to a live meetup with points people, even not me, just like any points people after a few drinks, then you're like, oh, you can do that. So,
I'm gonna tell my wife.
Yeah. So if you come to any live points and miles meetups, just follow us all on Instagram and then you'll find out where they are. That would be the main thing. I think we usually try to do it around August, but otherwise download the free Points and Miles 101 course on geobreezetravel.com/free course.
Thank you very much, Julia. I appreciate you taking the time out and schooling a dummy on points. And
oh, you're good.
And all the card people out there, or non-card people, or wives of card people, and military people that are not utilizing these little tips and tricks that Julia just laid out, please start doing it. And any of my hobby people that I'm talking to right now, sorry, Julia, 1 second. Please start accepting credit cards. It's very annoying when I go and I'm trying to buy stuff from you and you're refusing because you're trying to hide your taxes. One day they're going to ask for the tax money. So just let's be professional.
Also, the amount extra that you would have to pay for taxes is probably outweighed by like if you're getting a lot of the cash back or a lot of the free travel. So I know some people are like, oh, but the principle of it, like, I get it. I live in Las Vegas. We don't have to pay income taxes.
Forgot about that. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. So it is nice to save on your taxes, but sometimes I'm like, how much do you want to cap your earning potential and potential for other things in order to be like, no more taxes? So kind of just got to do the math rather than be like, the principle of the matter is I don't want to pay taxes on that. So there's
basically that was a nice way of saying quit being stupid and be smarter and get credit cards and be responsible. Those are all my tips for the Tasty Brains podcast today. Thank you again, Julia. Everybody like, comment, subscribe. IG, Tasty Brains podcast. Twitter, Paullydoughnuts. That's where a lot of my hobby friends know me from. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.